right, I wanted to start off by saying this. I know I sound sick, but I'm not. So, for all of you who are in the front row, have no fear. I work with Keely Hungate, who was mentioned just a second ago, and she's 7 months pregnant. And so I went and got tested for the flu, and I'm completely clean, even though I don't sound like it. But I also decided to take Tamiflu just in case. Not that I advocate for that sort of thing, but the upside is that I have this super rad voice for my presentation this morning, where I sound like a college DJ. So, caller number 96 wins 2 tickets and a backstage pass to see these guys at Six Flags, and to get a hat like that. All right, curiosity. It was a great theme. I was really thankful that Cody picked this when we first started talking about this. Really, as a theme, it's pretty simple. Stay curious as much as you can, as often as you can. So thanks for having me. Be sure to grab a donut. Just kidding. Okay, so that is kind of what we're told though. Stay curious, and it's a lot like when we're told to be creative, which is something that our clients say, of course, to us, and they should. They're paying us for that. And our publishers and our partners do too. And in those really fun moments about an hour before deadline or last night, at 11 p.m., it's what we say to ourselves. So ready, go. Be creative, like it's a faucet we can turn on. Or be this guy. Creativity in the USA is often characterized by what? It's heroic individualism. It's mysterious and magical. You've got the lone genius who for some reason always seems to be wiping mustard off of his chin. So when you get stuck, there's plenty of advice out there, right? You're told to go to Google, look around for other people's design that they've done successfully so you can copy it. You're told to put your butt in the chair and write something, just anything, just get it out. Find a muse, find a drink, get out into the woods for a long walk, maybe even get out in the woods and forage for some of these, which, by the way, is not my thing, but I have a collaborator in Chicago who swears by them. But if you think about it, all of those things are external. They're all external inspirations. And there's this assumption and almost a conflation of being inspired and be creative, where creativity isn't here. It's almost like an involuntary response if you can find the right inspiration, the right bridge between inner and outer. So is being curious that bridge? That's a little bit of what I want to pick at today, because I think it can be, but I don't think it necessarily it is. It's a little bit, the metaphor I like to use is it's like waiting a pedestrian signal. So you're stuck, and you're stuck, and you're stuck, and then all of a sudden there's that little bright guy, bright curious guy, and he's got to hurry across the highway in 15 seconds. And I think sometimes we believe that that's what curiosity is like, and that's what creativity is like. So is there a process, is there a method, both to design and to creativity broadly, and maybe even also to getting ourselves in some of these mindsets like curiosity? If you go to agency websites, you'll start to believe that there is one. And a lot of them have these interlocking kind of Olympic rings, and they've got some alliteration going on, and discovery, design, development, deployment, da-da-da. And they often have trademarks, but as soon as you scratch the surface a little bit, you see that they're all pretty much the same. People are just trying to persuade their clients that there's something credible going on. To me, this is much more what the creative process looks like. I did not draw this, I found it, and I thought it was pretty beautiful. Or this, which you might have seen floating around the internet, around Instagram. So you start off with, man, this is awesome, then this is hard, then this is shit, then I am shit, then this might be okay, and then this is awesome, hopefully is where you land. Well, these process diagrams, the other kind, I think really are ways to tell clients they don't have to worry. And to be honest, in my opinion, it's a little bit of a head fake. This has happened a lot with design thinking, which I'm really familiar with, and have been lucky enough, as Cody mentioned, to work with IDEO on a number of projects in the past 15 years. And to me, design thinking has become a little bit like you hand a young designer in particular or a client a guitar, and you teach them how to play 3 chords. And then you say, all right, good luck, go play the blues. And when they can't, after the first time, or after the 5th time, or after the 50th time, they get frustrated. They start to get pissed off. And they have one of 2 conclusions, which is either that the process sucks or that they suck. So they either start to think the process doesn't work, or I'm just not good enough to do it. You ever been in a brainstorm session where then a lot of people are gun shy to speak? Yeah, why? It makes sense. Who wouldn't be? Especially if you're a young designer who's just trying to find your voice. You don't want to look stupid. There's a lot of pressure. And I think some of these processes have created that. So what do? We say fail. Like, it's okay to fail fast, right? But again, if you scratch the surface on that, what we've done is we've shifted the idea of failure into just a stepping stone to success. So we talk about failure, but what we then talk about is a pivot or something that lets us stay in control. And part of what I want to talk about today is real failure and real discomfort in the creative process. But what we do as design professionals, sometimes we fall back in that old Steve Jobs approach. It's mysterious. We're going to go away and do something. We're going to come back here and we're going to wow you, and it's like magic. And even though it's hard to sell magic to the client, it's better for us, really, if we do, right? Because they don't understand what we're doing. They're surprised by it and they're delighted by it. This is an endorsement from the executive director that Keely and I got at the end of a project, and it's one of my favorites. She said, "I have to admit, I didn't really understand your process, and I admit that I wanted to, but you didn't explain it. But now that I see the work, I don't really care what your process is, it's just that good. You could tell me we sat down with martini olives for an hour and stared into space, and I would think, martini olives, who knew?" It's a pretty great endorsement. And if we see magic, we start to believe it. Maybe we are magic. So we're back to this point. Stay curious, be creative, just know going into it that there isn't really a process. So hope you have a great weekend. It's supposed to rain. Poor Cody, I won't do that again. Because I do believe that there is a way to position yourself, and with a couple of acts of will, by force of will, to grow more curious and by extension more creative. So let's start over. Let's start here. But I don't mean Chattanooga. I mean the bridge, on the bridge. No, I mean on the bridge. So growing up, I had a real fear of heights. And more accurately, what I would have is an undeniable urge when I was up someplace high to jump off. And it made me really nervous. Did any of you experience that? All right. So this is not advocated. I'll be very clear about this in a minute. But as my creative partner, as Keely said once, we were in the Empire State Building up on the 51st floor, and she said, when I look down, I feel like I'm supposed to jump, like I should jump. So have you been to DeSoto Falls, back of the mountain? I did jump off of that a couple of times a few years ago. But what I realized afterwards is that I was confused. Facing your fear doesn't mean jumping off. Facing your fear means sitting in it and being willing not to jump off, but stay there. So a couple of years ago, I started urban exploring and climbing into abandoned buildings at night and sitting on roof ledges with a couple other people around the city who asked to remain nameless, but I'll indict myself. And this really was my favorite place to go. It was, well, I'll kind of explain why. Now, first, do not follow my example, please. There are no signs that say don't climb the bridge. It must not be illegal, right? I'm sure it's illegal. I'm sure it's at least frowned upon. So I'm on record saying only an idiot would do it. Fortunately, you've all met one now. But it's easier than you might think. So those downward decline end posts are at about a 60-degree angle. And if you're wearing good tennis shoes, you can just walk up to it and grab it with your hands and just walk right up. It takes about 15 seconds. And once you're up above the lights, it's gorgeous because it's dark, because the lights are all pointed downwards. And nobody can see you, and it's incredibly peaceful, and you can see the whole damn city. A friend of mine took this photo. Now, I kind of wish that I'd known he was taking it, because I would have tried to stand in a way so I didn't look like I was peeing on Chattanooga. Although it's not an entirely inaccurate picture, because I don't see this as a heroic picture. I see this as a picture of a man who is about to pee his pants, because I really am afraid of heights. But I stayed up there for a long time because, and on multiple occasions, because I wanted to sit in being scared. And as I sat there, I got more and more curious about why I was afraid and what it felt like to be in that space, being comfortable, or at least more comfortable, with being uncomfortable. This guy, his name is Neil Stevenson, and he's a former managing director at IDEO, and we're working on a series of articles right now. He has an Oxford degree in psychology, and then was editor of a British music magazine called The Face, and a British online music platform called Pop Bitch. And his great interest right now is the hypothalamus and how to activate the right parts of your brain to get into a creative frame of mind. And my interpretation of this, at least, and what we've been discussing, is that if there is one part of your mind that has to do with the analytical and has to do with process and lights up when you're engaged in those functions, and there's a different part of your mind that lights up when you're making associations or speaking in metaphor or thinking in analogies, maybe that's why we can't talk about a creative process, because there's no such thing, and there can't be, the way our brains are wired. So one of the articles that we're working on together is rooted in this idea, which is a quote from him from research that he's pulled, which says the number one predictor of creative performance is openness to new experiences, also known as curiosity. And he says it with an English accent, so it's impossible to ignore him or disagree with him. But what I love hearing him say about this is there's an implication that you can change this. So there are a lot of personality traits you can't change, or maybe shouldn't or don't want to change, but with practice, you actually can grow in openness to a new experience, which means by extension, you can grow in creativity, which I think is a very encouraging thing. So this overlaps to some degree with this word we've all heard before, empathy, right? Especially in human-centered design, and especially in design thinking. And I have to be honest, I want to take an axe to empathy, which I guess is not a very empathetic impulse, but a soft axe, right? A tender one. And if by empathy you mean the ability to understand and share feelings of others to some degree, great. And I'm all in on that. But it's become a buzzword, or people talk about it as a mindset or even as a method. It's drifted into this gray area of seeing the world through someone else's eyes or walking in their shoes, and it's not possible. You just can't do it. We all see the world through our own lens, through our own perspective. You can never get inside another person's head. You can't feel what someone else feels. And it often becomes another way that we make clients and designers, and in particular young designers, feel bad about themselves because they're trying to do this thing that they can't do. I think it's okay that we can't ever feel what someone else feels. This is a Belgian writer I love named Georges Simenon, and in one of his detective novels, he says, if you could truly spend 30 seconds inside another person's head, it would drive you insane. Each of us is stuck seeing the world through our own eyes. I can stretch my neck around the corner and see into John's world, and that's great, and I think it's worth doing, but I have to truly engage with the fact that I'll never know what it means to be John or Megan or Justin. We can find common grounds and celebrate differences, and I can understand your needs, but I can't think like you. And I think this is beautiful, because I think especially when you have teams come together with multivalent points of view, it becomes an enriching experience if you engage with that. So more on that in a few minutes. So the design process, to some degree, is what we originally meant by empathy. It's coming to a problem and then backing out, and then coming back into the problem from a different angle and backing out again, coming back into the problem from a different angle, and it's less about finding the right way into a solution than about taking bits and pieces of each of those and cobbling them together in something that works, or at least should be tested. So, very quickly, am I saying we should stop trying to empathize? Of course not. I'm saying we should recognize that we can't, but also that we have to try. But I would submit that if we try to focus on what others feel, it's not the same as just being curious about them. Empathy and curiosity are different, and you can be truly deeply curious and yet still stay inside your own head in a way that is more accurate. I would also submit that when we talk about empathy, which is focused on others and how they feel, we're missing out on a really important metric, almost a barometer, which is our own level of discomfort, which is incredibly important in this process. I've been reading a French child psychologist named Piaget, and he talked about how kids, especially young kids, 4 to 6 years old, form mental models, and this is how they understand the world. So it helps them navigate the grocery line, if you think about it. If you've never been through a grocery line before, it could be incredibly confusing. It helps them walk. It helps them talk and know how to communicate. And one of his favorite examples is about cows. So he says when you're a young child, you learn about what a cow is by seeing a picture of a cow, by having your mom or your dad describe it to you. So it's got 4 legs, it's got a funny face, it's black and white. So one day you're in the country with your dad, and he says, look, honey, that's a cow. And she's like, no, it's not black and white. And he's like, no, that's a cow too. And the child thinks, what is going on, right? And so in that moment, they have to decide, is my dad lying to me? Or do I have to shift my mental model? And what Piaget talks about is disequilibrium. We get thrown off balance. But this is actually part of how we learn and part of how we grow. So that discomfort that you feel is actually something that is a necessary process of having your world expanded and being more open to the world. So think about this in light of creativity and curiosity both. When we talk about them culturally, right, creativity is fun. It's great, it's fulfilling, it like swells your chest and swells your head even maybe. Curiosity is rewarding, it's enchanting. Really, honestly, a lot of times it's not and shouldn't be. Sometimes it's more like a fog. Sometimes it feels more like failure, like real failure. But the problem is that we get rewarded most of our lives for being right and for being right the fastest. And those things are great when it comes to optimization and efficiency in systems, but they're not great when it comes to the creative process. To me, this is one reason that curiosity is so important. If we can take that disequilibrium but stay curious while we're in it, stay open to new experiences, whether it's about things or certainly about people, then it gives us a chance to move forward. So let me say it in a different way, since I'm a design professional speaking to design professionals. I'm coming to think of brand more and more, that the experience of creating a brand is less telling people what to think or what to do or what to buy, for sure. And it's more inviting people into a space of feeling and then presenting them with a choice. So that also can be, that can require that we have a deep curiosity towards the experience, toward the space, toward the client, but also that we're willing to be in that fog, feeling our way forward, refusing to settle on the first idea that we have, and then also leading the client through that emotional journey together, which is a lot different from doing magic and coming back and saying, ta-da. One question, though, I think that's fair, doesn't curiosity sound kind of sociopathic? Doesn't it sound kind of cold, like you're treating people like a specimen? Not if you remember that people have reasons for their fears, right? When someone has vertigo, we don't indict them for it. We don't say you're a bad person for having vertigo. It's not irrational to be afraid of falling. We all have these impulses that are paralyzing, and it's not just true of people, it's true of clients, it's true of corporations. The reason they're stuck in the way that they are is because they're afraid to break out of it. And you can have a lot of compassion for that. No client contempt. I don't believe in it. When they come asking us to help them come up with a new identity, which is how to think about yourself and how to talk about yourself, sometimes it feels like vertigo to them. And it's true of young designers too. Maybe one of them has read Fast Company and they know the 7 rules of brainstorming by heart. They started to find their design voice, and they're coming to this situation where they've got a little bit of confidence, but it's still eggshell thin. It's still this precious bubble of light. And they would be stupid to throw themselves out on the table in a way that could be violating, that could make them feel humiliated. I like this quote from Chuck Palahniuk, who wrote Fight Club. I paraphrased it in a conversation the other day and had to go look it up because I couldn't remember who said it. But young people's power is in how they appear. Their only power is in how they appear. They're attractive, they have youth, they have energy. If a rich person feels humiliated, he's still rich. If a smart person feels humiliated, she's still smart. But if you humiliate a young person, you take away the only form of power that they have. But I want to push this idea even further and actually make it a recommendation, because I believe that there is a competitive advantage in being willing to look stupid. In particular, internally with your team, but even externally with clients and with people who you are talking to, like in an interview or ethnographic situation. A willingness to be vulnerable. This is from Erasmus in 1509, but I think it fits really well with social media today. A willingness to be vulnerable, even to look like a fool, is crucial to growth. Not just growth, but personal growth. If we hold back from the challenges that hold a risk of making us look ridiculous, we miss out on life's most interesting situations. This is a long sentence. I'm going to take a deep breath. In our experience at 26 Tools, what gives the most freedom for creating good stories or brands or ads or campaigns is when a team of people come together in good faith that truly original ideas are born out of asking questions, saying stupid things, asking hard questions that don't have easy answers. In other words, being curious. If you are, the things we know are the things that are easy, right? Mystery is not easy. This is true in business, it's true in relationships, it's true in spirituality, it's true in faith. The mystery and the unknown, the things we don't really get until we dig and maybe never get, that's where the good stuff happens. I truly believe this. If you aren't willing to put forward an idea that is stupid in public, especially with a team, although it is advised to do it with a team you've come to trust, then you're not going to come up with an original idea. And there are lots of ideas out there you can recycle. You know, we can use zombies again, we can use ninjas again, but if you really want to come up with something that's original, I think this is much more, you're going to get there faster and you're going to get there in a deeper way. But there is a cost to it, right? You demystify the genius. Keely, my creative partner, I think came into the company with maybe some admiration for me, and now she probably has none because she's seen behind the curtain, right? She's seen what it's like to be in the fog and to be in the fog together. So it does cost you a little bit of pride. So one last thing before we do a little bit of Q&A. And it's a little bit of a coda, but I think it's an important one, which is this idea. Without kindness, curiosity and creativity even are pretty shitty exercises. In fact, rather than talking about empathy lately, I've been switching the word out and talking about kindness instead. In a world where so much of our identity can get wrapped up in what other people think about us, how many likes we get, how clever or creative people think that we are, where humiliation can be a real fear, I think kindness is today's bravery. So your client has vertigo, don't indict them for it. There's no client contempt. Young designer is nervous to look stupid. Great, that's completely legitimate. Why wouldn't they be? I used to say, I'd rather be dumb than mean, but I've learned that that's reductive. You don't have to choose. You can always approach life with kindness. It's a great quote from this guy. Be kind wherever it's impossible. Be kind whenever it's possible. It's always possible. There's a great quote from these guys with the same initials. Just a little bit of letting go, yeah. I don't want you to know. Try a little tenderness. That's from Def Leppard. For the record, I want to say I'm crap at this. Like, this is something that I really want to work on. On a regular basis, I could appropriately be described as an asshole. So here's what I'm leaving you with. Climb into your fear, whether it's a fear of looking stupid, of opening yourself up to discomfort and disequilibrium, of real creativity, of having to let go of an idea or let it evolve and then sit in that fear. It's possible that if you keep a real openness, you can create an active will to stay curious. After all, creativity and openness and curiosity are in each, at their essence, in some real way, an act of faith, a leap of faith. As I've gotten older, I've lost a lot of my faith, to be honest, but I still believe in little graces. Sun comes up, a client trusts us, we live up to that trust, they pay us. Those are all great things, and then we work together as a team to bring something that's strange and new and wonderful and beautiful into the world. I don't really think those are little graces, because there's no such thing as a little grace. Every grace is huge. Thanks.
About a year ago, I made the switch from journalism to marketing.
Yeah.
Just because I did feel like I was completely burned out. Like, I was not able to be creative where I was because I wasn't curious anymore. So when you have those moments where you are burned out, but the client still expects you to do something, how do you get yourself out of that mindset in that moment rather than
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish Keely were here because she was a UNC journalism major and practiced for a while before she got into marketing as well. And now she's a creative director. If I can answer a little bit from the side, tell me if I've answered it afterwards. But I have some clients, and early on especially had clients in the carpet industry. And anybody here in the carpet industry? Sweet. It's great. It's been really good to me. It was, especially early on. But it's really boring. And it's really hard to get inspired about it. But I think in some senses, that's our job. Like, our job is to back out, find the human element, find what it is why does someone pick a certain carpet? Is it because of how it looks? Is it how it feels? Is it because of what it does for their space? What difference does it make to the life of the person who's going to be living on it or working on it? And that's what we care about. If we're just looking at features and benefits like we were taught in marketing school, or I didn't go to marketing school, but like a lot of people are taught in business school, you're never going to get there. And you'll never be inspired, and so your customers will never be inspired. Does that answer a little bit? Yeah.
Cool.
I have a question for you about balancing. I feel like in the design space, there's a need for criticism, right? You're always running new ideas and criticizing them so that you can kind of get to something deeper. And I think that critical nature comes naturally a lot for people in that field. And so how do you hold that in the same space with kindness? That feels like this is the inherent struggle when it kind of came out in your talk, and I wonder if you can just dig into that a little deeper.
Yeah, it's fair. Do we have a dry erase marker? I don't know.
Don't actually.
All right, I was going to write in the window. Maybe I should have anyway. I think a lot of it is what we call coming in low, and truly recognizing coming in low, like with real humility, and recognizing that there is never a situation in which there isn't something that we can learn. And sometimes we have to rush for an answer. But when we do that, we have to rush for an answer together. But just to get very practical, there's a mechanism that I learned, and I can't remember, we collaborate with a lot of agencies, I can't remember which one it's from, but it's a methodology for critique. I think we may have talked about this before, where it's when someone presents an idea, you answer 3 questions, which are, I like blank. Does anybody else remember? Oh, I like blank, I wish blank, and how might blank. And I think it's not just padding the blow by saying I like, oh, I really like your cooler choices. It's that you really need to find something that you like that can be built upon, because the next 2 questions or next 2 categories are really about building on it. So I wish this were here, which is not, why isn't this here? It's like, I wish we could explore this more. And then how might is usually taking a step back and saying, what are the larger objectives, the business objectives, the larger design objectives that you're trying to achieve, and how can we bring those forward together?
You alluded to reading a couple of times. What's the most impactful book that you've read in the last couple of years?
Oh, Lord. There are new books that I've read, and then there are books that I return to. And I would say Creative Confidence by one of the Kellys, I think it's David Kelly, who is one of the D-School professors and IDEO founders, is a really good one because he has long chapters in there on taking a shower or taking a walk, and how a lot of times what you're working on that feels like oatmeal in your head right now can settle and sort into place. But another super basic book that I think has been hugely influential on me, but it's probably 15 years old or more, is The Brand Gap by Marty Neumeier. The Brand Gap. Yeah, it's old, but it's just a really great primer on how to talk to clients in particular about what you're doing and how to make some of these inductive leaps. Yeah.
Knowing the creative process is different for everyone, how do you know when you've reached the end? Is it a gut feeling? Is it predominantly dictated by timeline? I'm asking you personally because this could be different for everyone.
Yeah, it's a great question. When I write short stories, they're never finished, unless there's a publisher who's demanding them. When I work on a client project, they're finished when the client says it needs to be finished by. And I think what that does is it forces choices earlier, and that's part of why I'm excited about that. Jack White, guitarist, talks about building. He has some movie. It's with The Edge and a couple other people. I can't even remember who
I
else.
think it's called It Might Get Loud.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, Get Loud. Where he starts the movie off by building a guitar out of a box on his front porch. And part of what he discusses is the value of parameters and how if you're just on a wide open playing field, it's kind of like Kierkegaard's despair of pure possibility. There are too many options. But when you get parameters, it can help you make choices in ways that actually help you get where you want to go, even if it's not where you thought you'd be. And to me, time and budget are really the two biggest parameters that I live under. So yeah, that's always one of the first things I ask. And if a client says, oh, we don't need it for 4 months, then I say, don't say that to me because I won't start working on it for 3 months, right? So, anything else?
I really appreciated your empathy for young creatives, and I wondered what your advice would be for a team of young creatives. You know, you get the creative brief, you're off to the races, and you're in the trenches together, feeling those, you know, this is shit, I'm shit feelings. How can we kind of walk with each other and encourage each other in that?
Well, I think a lot of it is just getting to know each other, right? And knowing kind of what makes each person. Let me back up. Sometimes when we start projects, we haven't done this in a while, we should do it more. We start off with the creative brief includes 3 questions, which are, what is your hope for this project? What is your fear for this project? And what do you want to learn from this project? And so sometimes the third in particular is really interesting. And so it might be, I want to learn more about surfing, or it might be, I want to learn how to use Squarespace because I've been wanting to, and I want to see if we can apply it to this project. And I think if you have you've actually shared some of those values, and then you can find the common values, then it helps you start to find threads by which you are all being measured and you're measuring each other. But then I go back to what I said before, is really as much as you can get to know each other, both when you're working together, but also some outside of work, it really helps. Because you can see how people handle stress, and that's a lot of what this is about. And you can see what they need to hear, and you can communicate what you need to hear in those moments. And then most of it to me is, and maybe I can say this because I'm getting older, but most of it to me is just reminding each other that you've done it before, right? We've done this 100 times. We're gonna do it today. We're gonna do it tomorrow. And we don't need to worry about it because it's gonna come together in the end to some degree. And then the other big important thing I think is admitting that discomfort. And when to each other, I'm uncomfortable right now, I need help right now. We have a policy in our company where if somebody asks for help, you drop what you're doing, even if it's not billable, and even if it's inconvenient. Because if someone goes out of their way to ask for help, especially someone who is ambitious and high achieving, then it's meaningful. And so I think that having that as a policy gives people a lot of comfort, even if they never use it. Does that help?
Hey Taylor, so it seems like you came in your career from the writing side of things. How did you develop a better eye for design and work, hone your design skills to be more well-rounded?
So I'll make this really short. I came into my career from the academic side. So I was getting a PhD in literature and had a baby and was living overseas, and it was 5 weeks before September 11th, and we got some really bad advice like, your baby's not a citizen anywhere, you live in a Muslim neighborhood, you gotta get the hell out of the country. And so we took the bad advice, and so I came back here and finished my second master's thesis while I was working here, and started off, I guess technically my business life, I started off playing blackjack online, and made about $5,000 a month for about 3 months, which is enough to pay for diapers and stuff, and then cut myself off and have never done it since. And around that time, realized that stability and security is probably the most important thing, and so I took a job as a temp at a law firm here in town, the oldest law firm here in town, where I was like typing dictation with one of those things on and like smoking cigarettes with the secretaries in the alley. And from there, they couldn't deal with it. The attorneys couldn't deal with the fact that there was a white 29-year-old guy like typing dictation, and so they made me marketing coordinator. And then from there, I became statewide marketing director, And it was not, they are really, really good men. And again, they were kind to me, but it was just not where I wanted to be. And so I started going around to different startups that didn't have any money and nonprofits that didn't have any money, and I would just knock on their doors and I'd say, hey, I'll do a marketing project for you for free if I can use it in my portfolio. And so it was things like Needloves was brand new, and Chattanooga Market was brand new, and girls and boys clubs needed some help, and so it was a mix of things. And what I didn't realize is that most people in my field don't start doing pro bono work until they've been working for about a decade or more. So I was collaborating with all these really, really talented high-level designers who, and I was brand new. And so we were doing projects together and we liked each other, and over the course of the next 5 years, they moved away and they went to work places like Google Ventures companies and Atlassian and IDEO and other places, and we just stayed in touch and kept working together. And I think when you're exposed at a high level to people who are talented in design and people who understand design and are willing to take time to explain to you why taste matters first, but then also how a grid system works, then you can't help but pick it up. Now I will say, don't come to me for a design, even now, unless you need like a big red circle. I can probably pull that off in Photoshop. Or you need somebody's head put on somebody else's body, or like an animal's body. I'm pretty good at that. But to me, at that point, it's just about knowing great designers and continuing to. So there are plenty of times that I just defer. Like I say, look, I completely disagree with this, but if you tell me I'm wrong, I'll submit to that. So to me, part of getting to know design is getting to know elements. Thanks, everybody.